Over IRS Form 8834, Qualified Electric Vehicle Credit. Now this was the tax form that was originally in place prior to the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. That act expanded the Internal Revenue Code so that you could claim a tax credit or an expanded tax credit on an electric vehicle, either a new vehicle that you placed into service or a used vehicle that you placed into service during the tax year. So this is not the form that you would use to claim those credits. Instead, you would go to IRS Form 8936 to claim any of those new electric vehicle tax credits for vehicles placed into service after 2022. This tax form is for claiming qualified electrical vehicle credits that were considered to be passive activity credits from prior years. You'll find these tax credits either on IRS Form 8582-CR. This is passive activity credit limitations, or IRS Form 8810, which is passive activity loss and credits for corporations. So, be sure that before you go through this form that you're completing the correct tax form. With that said, we're going to walk through this tax form. It's fairly straightforward. It's one page, and then the instructions are on the back. So let's start with our name of our taxpayer, our hero, John Doe, and his social security number. Now in line 1, we'll enter any qualified electric vehicle passive activity credits that were allowed for the current tax year. So you'll have to refer to the instructions depending on which form, either the IRS Form 8582-CR or IRS Form 8810 for corporate taxpayers. Once you determine that passive activity credit, then you would enter it here. Let's just imagine that our allowed passive activity credit is $5,000. Now we're going to, in line 2, enter our regular tax liability. Then we're going to back out certain tax credits that might have reduced that tax liability. We're going to calculate the tentative minimum tax liability, and then we're going to take the smaller of either this amount or the amount that you would see after going through all of these calculations. So regular tax before tax credits. For individuals, this is pretty straightforward. You're going to add line 16 from your Form 1040, which is pretty much your stated tax liability, plus the item from Schedule 2, line 2, which is your excess advance premium tax credit repayment from IRS Form 8962. So you'll enter that here. Let's just say for intents and purposes that the Doe family owed $15,000 in taxes based on their regular tax before the credits. So if you're a corporation, you would enter the amount from your corporate tax return, Schedule J, line 2. If you're an estate or a trust, you would enter the amount from your Form 1041, Schedule G, lines 1A and 1B, plus any amounts reported on IRS Form 8978. That's the partner's share of tax return information. So you'll enter the appropriate tax liability number into line 2. And then in line 3, we're going to enter certain tax credits that we'll have to back out of that tax liability. So in line 3A, that's the foreign tax credit. We'll just say that they had $1,000 of foreign tax credit. This would be, you would find this on IRS Form 1116. Which is the tax form that calculates tax credit, foreign tax credits. And then certain allowable credits. So based on the taxpayer status that you have, we'll just go through this from an individual perspective. If you're a corporate taxpayer, if you're an estate or a trust, there are specific instructions in the IRS instructions on how you would enter this number. But for individuals filing 1040, 1040 NR, or 1040 SR, the calculation is this. You'll take line 19 from your IRS form 1040, 1040 SR, or 1040 NR. That's the child tax credit or the dependent from other, or the credit for other dependents from Schedule 8812. You'll add the credit for child and dependent care expenses from IRS Form 2441. You'll add education credits from IRS Form 8863. You'll add the retirement savings contributions credit from IRS Form 8880. You'll add the residential energy credits from IRS Form 5695. And then from Schedule 3, Line 7, you'll add other non-refundable tax credits. These are all listed in Schedule 3. So once you've added that amount, you'll back out a couple of tax credit items, specifically general business credit reported on IRS Form 3800, previous year minimum tax from IRS Form 8801, the alternative fuel vehicle refueling property credit from IRS Form 8911, and then the tax credit to holders of tax credit bonds from IRS Form 8912. Once you've made those calculations, you'll enter this amount here. So let's just say that the result of all those calculations is $1,000. Now for taxpayers that are filing 1041 or Form 1120, there are specific instructions in the Form 8834 instructions. There's specific guidance on how you would come up with this line 3B number. So now that we have line 3B, we're going to add that together with the line 3A, and we've got $2,000. So now we're going to subtract this from line 2 to come up with our net regular tax, which is $13,000. So the tentative minimum tax, it depends on, again, on your tax filing status. If you are an individual, you would simply enter the amount from line 9 of your IRS Form 6251. That's the tax form that helps calculate the alternative minimum tax. Corporations do not have a minimum tax as of any tax year beginning after 2017. And then estates and trusts would enter the amount from Schedule I, Form 1041, line 52. So let's just say that our tentative minimum tax was $10,000. We'll subtract line 5 from line 4. If this is 0, then we'll enter 0 here and on line 6 and on line 7. So $3,000. So in line 7, we'll enter the smaller of either line 1 or line 6. So we were eligible for up to $5,000. However, when we went through the minimum tax calculations, turns out we can only take $3,000 of that tax credit. And unfortunately, this specific tax credit, you are not allowed to carry it forward or carry it back. You have to use it or lose it in the given tax year. So if your line 6 amount is smaller than line 1, it means that you won't be able to take the maximum available credit. So that's a pretty straightforward form. That's all we have for this tax form. You would file this with your individual or your corporate income tax return to claim this qualified electric vehicle credit. We cover this topic in much more detail in our article, which you can find in the link in the show notes, or you can go to our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS Form 8834 in the search bar, and you should see our article with all of this information and much more. We go into a little bit more detail about calculating this credit, how you can tell which tax form you should use, and then other frequently asked questions. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like our videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, as always, please post them in the comments section. Otherwise, have a great day. Thank you very much.